Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat, and with another Python programming lesson. And this time we're going to learn all about arrays and lists, and we're going to use arrays to do validation. You might be wondering what all those pets are doing there in cages, like what's this all about? But you'll find out shortly. So let's get started. Okay, so Python storage arrays, we're going to learn about storage arrays. Now, they're an important component in most programming languages, not just Python. And we should tell you right now, too, that we're a bit of a slow talker, so you might want to go to the YouTube, the video player tools cog bar, and just set the video play speed up to 1.5 or even 1.75, and you'll probably find the video flows a lot better. Okay, so just mentioning that right now, but let's get back into arrays. So arrays are kind of some storage compartments next to each other, like in a row or in a column, think of it like that. And they all have to hold similar types of objects in them, okay? That's an array, and that's true in most programming languages, not just Python. So here we've got some drawers on the left here, and if you count them up, there's actually 10 drawers, but so the length of the array or the size of the array is 10 because we've got 10 storage compartments in it. All right, but the thing is that the computer starts numbering at 0, not at 1. So the computer doesn't count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It counts 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this first drawer is actually called drawers number 0. This one in the middle here, which we think would be number 5, is actually called drawers number 4 by the computer. And the last one, which is the 10th one, is actually called drawers 9 by the computer. So that's the upper limit of the array, that's where it ends, and the lower limit is where it starts at drawers 0, okay? And we don't have to think of it as vertical compartments, we can think of it as horizontal compartments, like these compartments in a slide-out kitchen drawer. And what we got here is we've got utensils, all the same sort of things stored in there. And this first one would be utensils 0, utensils 1, utensils 2, 3, and 4. So it ends at 4, even though there's 5 items in the array. And I know what you're thinking. This is going to do your head in, and it does when you first do arrays. So you just have to try and remember, we have to start counting at 0, not at 1, while we're doing arrays. And eventually it'll just fall into place and it's going to be okay. But remember, we got to think like a computer and start counting at 0, not at 1. Okay, now with Python arrays programming, in the first program in this lesson, we're actually going to look at pets. That's why we had all those pictures of the cute little cats and dogs on the front. And we've got Murphy here with us right now, actually, while we're doing the video. Hopefully he's not going to make any noise. Murphy, come here, come. No, he won't come to us. He's lying down and having a sleep. All right, let's stop wasting your time. All right, so that's actually Murphy in that first cage there. And that's the little overnight sleeping area inside the house he has. But House 1 Pets, all right? So House 1 Pets. If you don't know, Murphy is my pet dog. He was in the first video in the Python programming series when he was a little puppy. But anyway, it's not all about me, it's about your learning. So, all right, arrays. So we have this house number 1 on a certain street, and they've got 3 pets, a Labrador dog, a Persian cat, and a Burmese cat, all right? So we're going to store that in a Python array, and this is how you set it up in Python. You have to use square brackets, and because these things are words, they've got to be in quotes and have commas in between them. Now, this first one here in this list of storage boxes is actually position 0. Remember, because the computer starts counting at 0. So that's House 1 Pets brackets 0. This is House 1 Pets brackets 1. And this is House 1 Pets brackets 2. And just to confuse you, we have to use square brackets in Python, not these rounded brackets. So this is one of the hardest parts to understand about arrays, is how you set them up in the programming language and how we have an index for their position, whether it's the first one, number 0, or whether it's 1, or whether it's this one on the end here, which happens to be House 1 Pets 2. So look, think of it as we've got all these cages lined up, maybe at a veterinary surgery or somewhere, where the pets are being sleeping overnight while they stay at the doctor's. And so we've got cage square bracket 0 here, we've got cage square brackets 1 and cage square brackets 2. So this could be, those cages could be empty at the moment. So when you set up an array, it doesn't have to have things in it. You can set up an empty array, which you're going to fill up with things later on. And what we've got in here is we've got pet 1, pet 2, and pet 3. Now, Murphy is a Cocker Spaniel. He's not actually a Labrador dog. That was kind of a little bit of a mess up. And this isn't a Burmese cat. It's a ginger cat with a funny sort of shadow on its body there, like it rolled in some dirt or oil or something. But the middle one is right. That is a Persian cat. That's a friend's cat. So that's the idea to get your head around, that we've got these storage compartments like these little cages that the pets can sleep in at night. And this is cage 0, cage 1 and cage 2. We start counting them at 0, not at 1. And in here we've actually put something in the storage compartment. We've put pet 1, pet 2 and pet 3. And pet 1 happens to be a Labrador dog, pet 2 is a Persian cat, and pet 3 is a Burmese cat. All right, so when we set up the Python program for this, it takes a bit of work because remember, we can just look at those cages. We've got eyes and we can see, we can count, okay, there's 1, 2, 3 items in the array there, and they start numbering at 0, 1 and 2, all right, for the positions. But of course the computer's blind, and so we have to do code to cope with it. So look, here's the first program I'm going to do. It's print pets on Mount Pleasant Street. So house 1 pets, we've got equals square brackets. Make sure you use the square brackets. We've got our Labrador dog, Persian cat, and Burmese cat, and then we close our square brackets. And here we can use this Python len function. So we use our eyes to count that there's 1, 2, 3 pets there in the array. Python can use this len function. So if we put house 1 pets total as our variable, set that equal to len brackets house 1 pets. So it'll go and look at this house 1 pets array here and work out those 3 items in there. So the length is actually 3 for the array. So we're just going to print that out. Okay, so we print number of pets in house 1, and then house 1 pets total here is of course a number. So remember, you have to string it up so it's visible. It's in visible format and can go out on the screen. So we're just going to put out how many pets there are for that house. And then when you want to output the contents of an array, you want to list what these 3 items are here. We're going to use a for in range here and 0, comma, up to house 1 pets total, and print house 1 pets brackets I. And what will happen is that loop goes round. I will be 0 to start off with, so it'll go to cage 0 and print out Labrador dog. And then the next time it repeats the loop, I will go up by 1. So instead of being 0, it's going to be 1. And then it's going to go to cage 1 and print out Persian cat. And then it'll go up to another one. So 1 plus 1's 2. So it'll go to cage 2, which is here, and print out Burmese cat. And then it reaches the house 1 pets total because it goes up to 3 next. So when it hits that total, it does not go through the loop anymore. So it'll only print out the contents of cage 0, cage 1 and cage 2. And when it gets to cage 3, that's when it just stops and it doesn't do any printing out. All right, but we're going to go through this in more detail in the lesson. We've probably overloaded you here with the introduction. But the main thing is, if you get this idea about identical containers that all contain the same sort of thing in them. All right, so we don't suddenly put a whole bunch of kids' toy trucks and tractors in here. We're putting pets in instead. And that we start counting at 0, okay? So that's the main thing you need to get out of this. Let's move along. So learning objectives we've got in this lesson. We're going to learn how to set up a storage array of data items in a Python program, which is what we pretty much just taught you to do right then, and how to use the Python len brackets function. That will tell us how many items there are in the array. That's like Python's little set of eyes, where it can count how many items there are in those storage compartments. It can take a look in each one and count them. And we've already pretty much done that. How to print out the value for the total number of items that are in the array. Well, we saw that, and you have to use the str on that total to put the number into something we can see on the screen. How to print a list of array items by referencing their individual indexes. Yes, now there is a simpler way of doing it where you don't use a loop, and we'll show you that. Then we're going to print it out using a while loop and a for loop. So we just had a very quick look at a for loop, but we're going to use while loops as well, because you need to know how to use both. How to add additional items into the existing array. So maybe house 1 loves pets so much that they get some more pets, and you can use the same array and you don't have to do much extra at all just to add those extra pets in. Knowing the difference between an array and a Python list. Okay, we've just been talking about arrays here where everything has to be the same type that you store in the array. In a list, it doesn't have to all be the same type, and we'll show you an example of that and get you a program that does something that shows you that. Now, then we move on to sort of the part 3 of the lesson, which is going to be, we can do input validation. So we can put the allowed values of what something's allowed to be into an array, and then you can check what the users put in and see if it's one of those items in the array. If it is, you tick it off, yes, that's good data. And if it's not, you say, no, sorry, there's an error there. All right, and we're going to use that concept to make a membership application program for people to join a special club. And we'll make one for you for the Mikey Mike Club, and then you're going to make one for a Murphy Cocker Spaniel Dog Club. All right. It's not all about him and his dog. Stop that. Okay, there will be some challenge tasks. So challenge task 1, the first program we'll show you how to do is that one for House 1 pets. And here's where we've added some extra pets in. They decide they get a rabbit, lizard and bird as well. But we'll show you how to do that. So you can print out all of the pets and count them up, that there's 6 pets altogether, and print that on the screen. Then you'll have a challenge task for House 2. So House 2's got 5 pets, and you need to get their 5 pets printed out on the screen. Now that shouldn't be too hard. You've got the code that did House 1, right, for program 1. And it's pretty much just doing a copy and pasting within that program to make it a bit bigger so that it can do House 2 pets as well. All right, so that'll be your first challenge task. And the second challenge task, we're going to make this example validation program using arrays for people who join this club called the Mike Club, and more about that later on. And then once that's done, and we've shown you how to do that, it shouldn't be too hard for you to make this application for joining the Southern Bayside Spaniel Dog Owners Club. That's a mouthful. So there's little Murphy, and he could be a member of that club because he is a Spaniel type dog. And applicants must answer yes. So you're going to ask the applicants, do you own a Spaniel breed dog? And they'll have to answer yes. And then you'll ask them what suburb they live in, and they'll have to live in one of these suburbs in Melbourne, which is a Southern Bayside suburb. Now, if you're in another country or another city, that's fine. Just change this to some suburbs that would be in a certain area in your city. So as long as you've got about sort of 8 or 10 or 12 of them, okay? And they don't have to be alongside the water, alongside the bay. They could be anywhere. Maybe it could be the some sort of outer suburbs somewhere, the outer eastern suburbs, and you could have 12 suburbs for your city, okay? So you don't have to copy ours exactly. And if you don't like Cocker Spaniels, but how could you not like them? They're so little and cute. If you don't like them, you can use a different dog, or maybe you like cats instead, and yours could be a cat club. All right, so let's get over into the lesson and get started on this. All right, so when you get the downloads for this video, you'll get these whole printed document here that tells you what to do. So we were talking about House 1 pets, and they've got a Labrador dog, a Persian dog, and a Burmese dog. Now we've set it up in an array here. The alternative to doing that is like we've been doing it previously in programs, which is where you just have some variables, and you'd have House 1 Pet 1 is a Labrador dog, House 1 Pet 2 is a Persian cat, and House 1 Pet 3 is a Burmese cat. So you could set up 3 variables, but the great advantage of arrays is that if you've got a lot of pets, like if you're listing all of the different sorts of pets that visited a veterinary doctor within the last 3 months, it might be a really long list, and it would take ages writing all separate variables, whereas you could just copy and paste the names into this House 1 Pets array, and that would be quicker. So arrays are kind of good for big things. This is just small because we're keeping it as a simple example. So we spoke about storage arrays, that arrays are the ones that have to have objects all of the same type. So all our drawers here look the same, and they would have to have the same type of thing in them. Lists we'll talk about later. Lists, you can mix up different types of items in the storage compartments. Okay, so House 1 Pets, we've got a Labrador dog, Persian dog, and Burmese cat, and here is the program. And this version 1 program, actually, we're not even going to print them out. We're just going to count them using that length function. All right, so you need to pause the video and carefully type this program in. If you want to have different pets, that's fine. If you like snakes and lizards and want to have sort of snakes and lizards in here, or if you like birds and want to have different types of birds, that's fine. Anyway, get this typed in and run it. Now, when you run it, this is what you should get. It should say pets on Mount Pleasant Street. The number of pets in house 1 is 3 pets, okay? So it's just gonna tell you if you run it in your particular interpreter. This was in PyScripter, but you could use MU or PyCharm. And here we've got just when it's running from the Windows folder version of the PyExe program, okay? So it's just counting up how many pets there are using that len function. All right, so that's kind of stage 1. Now stage 2, we're going to have our house 1 pets here, and we want to print them all out. So I want to print out Labrador dog, Persian cat, and Burmese cat. All right, so position 0 is where this one is. This is called house 1 pets 0 because the name of the array is house 1 pets. All right, so because the name of the array is house 1 pets, the Persian cat here is at the we start counting at 0, remember, so this is at number 1. So this is house 1 pets because that's the name of the array, brackets 1, and this one here is house 1 pets, and in Python they need to be square brackets, which I maybe should have done here, but they didn't look that good. House 1 pets brackets 2. All right, so that's the hardest bit to understand. You have to start counting at 0. So remember, think of that we got cage 0, cage 1, cage 2, and we just want to look in the cages and see what pets there are and tell somebody about it. That's what we're trying to do here in the program. All right, so printing out the arrays. Now what we can do is, rather than do a loop, which we'll do sort of in the next program, in this one we're just saying, okay, let's get cage 0, let's get cage 1, and let's get cage 2. And we'll just get cage 0, check what's in there, print it out. Get cage 1, check what's in there, print it out. Get cage 2, check what's in there, print it out. So we're just going to use sequencing, use a sequence. So in that program you had about the length, you just need to add in underneath there to print the contents as well. So we're going to have print house 1 pets, because that's the name array. And in Python, you have to use square brackets. Just remember to have square brackets here, 0, and that should find out that there's a Labrador dog in that position and print Labrador dog. Then we're going to print out house 1 pets, the name of the array up here. The array is called house 1 pets, square brackets 1, and house 1 pets, square brackets 2. All right, so that should print out 0, the 1 and the 2, so we should get Labrador dog, Persian cat, and Burmese cat. All right, so to access each item in that array, you have to use the name of the array, square brackets index. Now what the index is its computer count position starting at 0. So that's index 0, this is at index 1, this is at index 2. A bit like those cages. We had cage 0, cage 1, and cage 2. All right, so pause the video, add these extra 4 lines to program, and then run the program. And what should happen is it should say pets on Mount Pleasant Street, number of pets is 3, and it's actually going to print out what the 3 pets are. All right, now you might be happy at that because we're all done. We've said how many pets there are and we've printed them out, so it's all good. But when you're doing bigger arrays in bigger programs, we need an automated way of doing the output using, and we're going to use a while loop for it. So it's not really going to matter when we've only got 3 pets here. But like we said, if you had this large list of things that pets from the veterinary doctor for 6 months, which could be several hundred, then you wouldn't want to have to write several hundred print statements into your program. You just want to write one while loop that's going to go through the array and get them all and print them out as it goes along through the array doing the loop. And you need to have done previous lessons in our course so you understand what a loop is. All right, so the maximum index here, where we finish up, is at house 1 pets 2 for this example. Now there's a mathematical formula that can always be used for any array. The length for this array, how many items are in it, is 1, 2, 3, okay? And because the silly computer starts counting at 0, the last index position is always going to be, the maximum index, the last index position will always equal the length of the array minus 1, okay? So if this is 3 long, the last one is 3 minus 1 is 2, and that's what we got, house 1 pets 2. If this was 300 long, okay, the last one would be at 300 minus 1, this index would be 299, okay? It's all because of the silly computer wanting to start counting at 0 instead of counting at 1. Okay, so that's a little formula we can use, and we can use that formula in our program. So going back to the pets in the cages again, what we're trying to do in this loop is we need to get each pet out of its cage, starting at cage 0, because the computer starts counting at cage 0. So think of this, that the pets are in their cages, we're going to get them out and bring them into the waiting room in the vet and say, whose dog is this? This one's ready to go. And that's it. Then we'll come to the next one and take it out and show it. And we'll get to the next one and take it out and show it. All right. So that's what we're kind of doing. And think about that in your head as we do the Python statement. So we're just going to stop when we reach pet 3. But remember, in the computer counting, that's going to be house1 pets brackets square brackets 2, okay, not 3, which is where all the confusion happens. All right, so we need our loop to start processing at house1 pet square bracket 0 the first time through, and then it will need to do house1 pets 1 the second time through the loop, and finally we need it to do house1 pets 2, and then we need it to stop doing the loop because there's only 3 cages with animals in it, so there's no point in looking for any more because there aren't any more, okay? So this is how we do it. We say pet index equals 0 to make sure we start at the first storage position properly, and while the pet index is less than or equal to, and here's where we're using that formula, length of house1 pets minus 1, okay? That was that little formula that works for any size array, and so that's going to make the magic happen in the loop, and this is the loop code here. So where we did our individual printing out, just remove that from your current program, delete those lines out, or just use a hash or a pound sign here, or a number sign to comment them out, and we're putting in this pet index equals 0, so make sure we start at the right position right at the very beginning, and while the pet index is less than or equal to length of house1 pets minus 1, okay, print out house1 pets brackets pet index, okay? So this is our pet index value. So pet index is starting at 0. And then so we can move along to the next cage, the next time we do up here the loop, we set pet index equals pet index plus 1, okay? So we'll need that. And these two are pushed in 4 spaces so that they're part of that while loop. All right, so that can be replaced with this. Go ahead and do this and run your program. And of course, when you do all of that and run the program, here we go, we get the same old thing that we expected. Just like we did with the individual prints. Number of pets is 3, and we get our 3 pets printed out. Okay, so that was the version 2 code where we printed them individually. Here's our loop where we can print them out using a loop. The great advantage of version 3, like we said, is this can work on any size array because we've used that formula in there that the maximum index is how long the array is, how many items are in there, minus 1. Minus 1 because the silly computer starts counting at 0 and not 1. So everything's 1 back from its usual position. Okay, so that is great. That will work for any type of array that's any size. So this is a really cool, handy little piece of code here. Now, adding extra items into the code. This is why version 3 code with the while loop is so good. So house 1 decides to get some more pets. They're going to get a rabbit, a lizard, and a bird. Now, you keep your array going for ages and ages by just going to new lines. As long as you put comma here on the end of Burmese cat, then we can put rabbit, comma, lizard, comma, bird, or you can have them go right across the page. We were just showing here you can go across 2 lines, or you can even have it back here, that the rabbit starts here in that column. It doesn't really matter what column they start in either. Python just sees a comma, and then it just goes looking, ignores all the spaces until it finds something in quotes. So that's all really cool. So that's how we put in the pets, and believe it or not, that is all we have to do. We don't have to change any program code because we've got that cool little while loop code that works for any array. So it'll work for an array 3, and this now has 6 items in it, and it'll work for this one as well. So when you run the program, after adding in those 3 extra pets in house 1 pets, you'll find that, yeah, the 3 extra pets show up okay, and that's all good. So on to challenge task 1, where you add the pets for house 2. So remember we spoke about this at the beginning of the video in the intro section. So house 2 on Mount Pleasant Street, they've got pets, but they really like birds. So they've got a canary, a budgerigar, a parrot, a minor bird, and a cockatoo. So we're going to have a second array in the program. So I have to make another array. This one's going to be called house 2 pets, and have some square brackets and put these guys in for house 2 pets. And then all you have to do is modify the program. Basically, you just copy and paste the house 1 pets len statement that's doing the counting, and the house 1 pets while loop that's doing the looping and printing out, and have that for house 2 pets, okay? So you'll have 2 lens and 2 while loops. One will be doing house 1 pets that's already there. You're just making a new one to do house 2 pets. So look, it shouldn't really be that hard. And we'll have our house 1 stuff with its 6 pets, and the number of pets in house 2 is 5 pets, and we've got all the birdies there. Okay, so that should print out. So that's your challenge task. So you can pause the video and do that one. And then I think we're ready to start into the sort of doing lists. Okay, Python lists. Okay, so remember, the video has an indexed timeline index of the contents in the YouTube description for the video. So you could, if you've had enough, because we have been going for nearly 25 minutes here, if that's enough for you for today, just to have done this first one on arrays and how to get their length and how to loop to print out their contents, that's great. You can just stop, and then you can come back another day and pick up in the timeline index where you're up to, because where you're up to starting now will be the difference between an array and a list in Python. So we've been doing arrays. Now a list is pretty much exactly the same as array. It's just you can have mixed data types in it. So we just had pets, and pets, the names of pets, because they're words and things, that's called string data, where we string together a bunch of letters to make a word, just like stringing Christmas tree lights together. So strings are basically words or sentences and things like that. So arrays have to have all the same type. So they have to be either strings of words, or they could be numbers. So you could have an array set up that has a bunch of numbers in it, but you cannot in an array mix up words and numbers, but in a list you can. So that's the difference. A list can have numbers and words in it. So what we're going to do here is, here's a program that you can type in and run to see how this works. So we're going to have these items prices for Passy's grocery store. So the avocado dip costs $4.55, the frozen pizza costs $9.45, and the milk costs $1.99. And notice we're just doing it the exact same way we did an array. We're just having the name of the array, the name of the list in this case, our grocery items equals square brackets, and we've got things with commas in between them. So you don't even have to tell Python you're doing a list instead of an array. Python figures it out. It sees that, hey, there's a mixture of things in here. I've got some words and I've got some numbers. Oh, this must be a list, not an array. And what happens there is that we can write a while loop. So we set the item index to 0, so it goes to the first one. But the only trick in this is we want to print out avocado dip, and next to it we want its $4.55 price before we move to the next line and put frozen pizza $9.45, okay? So there's a little kind of trick in there. It says we eant to display. I have to fix that. We want to display the item plus its price on the same line. So what you do is you say print out grocery items item index plus $, then skip along to the next index. So grocery items, the item index you're on +1 will take you along to the next one, and you can print that out as well, okay? So we're just going to print out where we're up to, avocado dip, and then we're going to put a space and $, then we're going to jump ahead one here because we put item index +1 in the square brackets and grab the 455 at the same time. Now, because we just did 2 positions, our index needs to move up by 2, otherwise it won't get to frozen pizza properly, all right? Now, you might have to think about that for a while, but that's a little trick, and you'll see when you run the program. So you need to type this one in. So you've got this program here, because having an items price list is a pretty handy sort of little program to have. What'll happen is that it'll do avocado dip the $4.55, and then because we moved it along we said, okay, we just did 2 things out of the array, so it's index +2, then it does frozen pizza, and index +1 will get the price, and it does milk $1.99, okay? So that's a little program there that is lists, because we have a mixture of words and numbers. Looks just like an arrays program in Python, but it will actually process okay and work it as a list. All right, into the third and final part of the video, and here is our good friend, Mike, who has a club. And he calls it the Mikey Mike Club, okay? Because this is Mikey. Now, Mikey's this pretty kind of wealthy, about town sort of guy, I guess. And you can only join the Mikey Mike Club if your name is Michael, Mick, Mickey, Mike, Mikey, or Mickey. Okay, so if your name is based on Michael, like his name, because he figures, I like Mike, and he should like any other Mikes as well or something. I don't know whether any of you are old enough to have watched this show called, I think it was The Goodies, where you had these three characters and you had Mike the cool guy, and you had Neil the hippie, and you had Rick, who was some kind of punk rocker guy. And it was kind of this comedy show anyway. Mike was the cool guy. So this is the cool guy, Mike. And you have to have a name that's like Michael. Okay, so one of these sort of names. Only those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are the only allowed names. So we're going to have this sort of prototype to do the logic that you'd need for your web program, because they'll be joining through a web page, I imagine. And this is how you do it, okay? So this is how we can do validation using an array. So application join the Mikey Mike Club, just going to print that out. Now you have valid names, that's the name of the array, and we're just putting equals with our square brackets, and we're putting in those 7 things there with commas and quotes, so that should be very straightforward. Now the person's going to type in, be asked to type in a name. So here we've got an input statement, which you've seen in previous lessons. Type in your first name, and application successful, we're just setting it to false because we're assuming the name check's going to fail. And for this time we're using an I loop instead of a for loop instead of a while loop. Okay, so for I in range from 0 to 7, okay, because we need to start at index 0 and not to do the loop when we reach 7, because 7 is at the end of the array, because we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? So when we get to index 7, that's here where there isn't anything, all right? And computers don't like it if you go to where there isn't anything. So that's confusing because you think, why are we stopping at 7? We've got that Mickey, the 7th one to do. But remember, that isn't the 7th one because the stupid computer starts counting at 0. And it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is actually the 6th. Index 6, so when we get to index 7 here, to avoid a program crash, that's when we stop. That's how that code is working. And if the person name, so if that name they typed in is equal to valid names, okay, if we found their name as we were going through this list, we set it to true, okay? And so if your name is Jack, what will happen is it'll go through this loop 7 times, all right, from 0 up to 6 and then stop at 7, which is really confusing. But it'll go through, Jack doesn't match Michael, Jack doesn't match Mick, Jack doesn't match Mickey, Jack isn't that Mickey, Jack isn't that Mike, Jack, no, Mickey, no, Jack is not that. And so application successful will stay false because you didn't have your name equal any of the valid names as it did the loop. Okay, so this loop in here, it might take some work to understand it, but what it's doing is it's taking your name you typed in and comparing it each time to these names. If it finds a match, it's going to say, yeah, that's a successful application. It's going to set the flag there, application successful equals true. If it doesn't match up with any of these, it's just going to leave application successful equals false. And so you'll get a rejection message. How sad. Rejection is so sad. You'll get application rejected, all right? But if you do match one of those names, you'll have application successful. And welcome to the Mike Club. Okay, so you need to type that in and then you can test it by running it. So this is a brand new Python program. So you need to start a new Python project, and we're going to have this array container with the 7 allowed names in it, and that program to check their application when they type in what their name is. All right, so what we're doing here is we've got these allowed values. The valid names are only these 7, but remember we call them valid names brackets 0 because that's the name of the array. This is valid names brackets 1, this is valid names brackets 2, and we had a loop that was going to work through that for us. We didn't have to list all of these separately in our program. And so when we get the results are in for the Mikey Mike Club. And if your name is Mick, well, Mick was one of the 7 names. So yes, Mikey says you're into the club. Congratulations. Welcome to the Mikey Mike Club. What a club to belong to. If your name is Mickey, that's going to be okay too. Now notice Mickey was the last one, and it's very important that when you test, you always test this last one because it's very easy to make a programming mistake with that for I in range 0,7, you might have put 0,6 or something, and then it won't reach Mickey. So it's always very important to test this last one. And Mickey works. And welcome to the Mikey Mike Club for Mickey. Passy, if your name's Passy, you're a great guy, a really great guy. But there's going to be no Mikey Mike Club for you because Passy is not one of the list. Not on the list, sorry. Can't join up, not on the list. Poor Passy. He's rejected. Not the first time in his life he's been rejected, let me just say. All right, validation using an array of allowed values. Now, we're going to add to this. Mikey has decided he wants to make this club upmarket and exclusive. Upmarket. He wants to make it upmarket. So you have to live in one of the 10 most expensive suburbs in Melbourne. So Google this for the city you live in, like you might live in Los Angeles or New York or Dubai or Shanghai or Jakarta or Mumbai or anywhere. Get your 10 most expensive areas in your city. Now for Melbourne, the Melbourne area, we've got them listed down the bottom here, but anyway, and they also have to support, these are kind of the two rich, wealthy teams, I think, for football teams in Melbourne that the sort of rich people like to support. The Melbourne Football Club and the Hawthorn Football Club. All right, I'm talking like that, like a toff. So yeah, you have to live in one of the 10 most expensive and support either of these teams because then you're upmarket and exclusive. And Mikey wants to know you. He wants to be your friend because Mikey's a bit of a snob, I guess. So we have to check if the name's okay. We've seen how to do that. Now we're going to have to check if the suburb's okay. And we're going to have to check if the football team's okay and set that to true. So we're not going to have the application successful straight away. You're going to have name valid equals true, your suburb has to be valid equals true, and your team valid has to be equal true. And then we need some final processing that says, okay, if the name valid's true and the suburb valid's true, and they've got the right sort of football team, that's true as well. You can join the Mikey Mike Club, the very exclusive Mikey Mike Club. Otherwise, you're going to get rejected. All right, now the 10 most expensive ones in Melbourne are Toorak, Middlebuck, Brighton, and those ones there, okay? So if you're living in Melbourne and you want to have some suburbs to use, your 10 suburbs are those ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's all working. All right, so here's the code for version 2. Version 2 does the 3 checks specified in the pseudocode above. So, all right, so we had our valid name. So we're adding to our existing Mikey Mike Club. And we're going to have an array here called valid suburbs, where you put in those 10 richest suburbs or most expensive suburbs in Melbourne or in your particular city. And then we have person name, they input it in, type in your first name. Valid name's going to be false. We'll assume it's not going to be a Mikey Mike type club name. And then we check in those valid names, whether it's Mick, Mickey or whatever. We saw that in the first program. So we're just pretty much cloning this to do the suburbs. So we have the person type in what suburb they live in, and valid suburb is going to be false. We assume they don't live in one of the most expensive suburbs. Then we're going to check out. We're going to go through that suburbs array of the 10 most expensive ones. And if they happen to have a matchup, that's going to be good. Valid suburb would be true. So they might have a valid name and a valid suburb. Things are looking good for them. And the final check is the football team. Now, there's only 2 teams to check for. So we don't use an array for this, okay? Some things, if it's just a yes/no question, or if you're just checking 2 things, you don't really need an array. That's kind of overkill. So we'll just ask them to put in their AFL football team, and we're going to use an if/or statement here. So you say if the person team that they've put in double equals is exactly equal to Hawthorn, or the person team is exactly equal to Melbourne, okay? Then we're going to set that their valid team's true. Otherwise, the valid team will just stay false as we set it here at the start. Now, just be careful with this, because if you put if person team double equals Hawthorn or Melbourne, that's not going to work. It has to be coded like this. Now, strictly speaking, I don't think you need these 2 sets of red brackets here, but we just kind of figured it makes it look clearer that it's this thing or it's that thing, okay? And we're not going to do all the processing yet because we're going to show you that's quite involved, working it out, but we'll just to have some debug prints here so we can check everything's all right. So we're going to print a debug print here. We'll print the valid name equals, and we'll string up what the valid name is. So we'll work out whether the valid name came out true or false. We're going to print out whether suburb came out true or false. And these Boolean variables that are true or false, they have to be str'd just like numbers do, so you can display them on the screen. So you'd find that out if you tried to just do valid name equals plus valid name, it's not going to work. You have to string it up before you output it. So yeah, get this program typed in and run it. And what you should find is we had to do quite a few tests to make sure it's working. So if you're Mick and you live in Brighton, one of the 10 richest ones, most expensive, and you barrack for Melbourne, oh, that's jolly good. You sound like you're going places, Mick. We've got the valid names true, that's true. If you're Mickey, that's okay. You live in Camberwell, that's okay, that's expensive, but you barrack for the Carlton football team, not Melbourne or Hawthorn, you're in trouble because you've got true, and false for your team. Then we have all these other ones here, like if your name's Reginald, well, that's not going to cut it. Valid name is false. Suburb you work in Middle Park. Okay, that's an expensive one to live in, so that's good, that's true. And you barrack for Melbourne. Oh, jolly good for you. So that's true as well. And here we've got Mickey. So Mickey's good. He lives in Kew. That's an expensive suburb. Oh, he barracks for Collingwood. He's a good bloke like Passy. But that's not going to cut it because you have to get in the Mikey Mike Club. You've got to barrack for Hawthorn or for Melbourne, so he's not going to cut it. He'll get rejected. And here we've got Jane, who's in Berwick, and she does barrack for Melbourne though, so false, and there she won't get in either. So now we're going to comment these out, and we're going to do this processing, and this processing is going to be harder than more involved than you think, because you think you go, okay, well, if the name's okay, if that's true, if the suburb's true, if the football team's true, welcome to the Mikey Mike Club, else application rejected. But we have to have this user tolerance, which we've spoken about in other programs, and kind of make programs user friendly. So we need to have more than that. We need to tell someone why they were rejected. It's not very nice to just say, reject. We need to tell them why, okay? So the basic pseudocode is like that, but the code's going to end up a lot longer because if there's 3 different things and there's 2 options for each one, that means altogether, if you've done some mathematics probability studies, I think there's 6, or is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? No, we've got 8. How did that work again? Oh, now I'm confused myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that's going to be 8. So the first one is, here we go. There's 8 combinations because we're checking in groups of 3. Okay, so when we did that debug printing, you could have true, and that's great. If everything's true, you're all right kind of guy, and you can go in the welcome. You can go in the Mikey Mike Club, but you might fail. There's all these 7 ways here of failing to be able to join the Mikey Mike Club. And there's TFT, TTF, and TFF. So that's all the combinations that start with your name's okay. And then we look at the other 2 things. Now you might have your name not okay. So the first one might be false. And then you've got, so the combinations are FTT, you can have FTF, FFT, or FFF. All right, so there are 8 combinations that we need to check for. So if you match up on all 3 criteria, great, welcome to the Mikey Mike Club. Now, if your name's okay, but your suburb's not okay and your team's are okay, you need to say application rejected, and you need to tell them why. They failed the suburb criteria, okay? The next one was, I think, a TTF. So if we've got that you here, that your name's okay, your suburb's okay, but wrong football team, you barrack for Collingwood, application rejected, you failed the team criteria, and so on. So if your name's okay, your suburb's not okay, and your team's not okay, two black marks, 2 crosses against you, matey. Application rejected, failed suburb, and team criteria. Okay, so you've got to put all 8 of those in and then run it and check that it all works. So that will be a lot of testing because all 8 of the above conditions need to be tested. We haven't put the test print screens in there. We did do them, but we didn't want the documents too big, so we didn't put them in. So we're getting right near the end here. We're into challenge task 2, the Southern Bayside Spaniel Club, which won't have 8 checkings to do. We're only looking at 2 things. Do they own a spaniel dog, and do they live in the right suburb for that area that the dog club's in geographically? So there's nothing snobby about this. It's just a geographical thing. Now they just have to answer yes to the question. So you won't need an array for that. That'll be kind of like the football team, you know, that's a lot simpler. But for the list of suburbs, you will need to use an array to check that the suburb they put in is one of these suburbs, which are the sort of southern Bayside suburbs of Melbourne. And you need a message for them about how they failed. So there'll be 4 possibilities. They could have a Spaniel and they're in the right suburb, and yes, they can join the Bayside Spaniel Club. They might have a Spaniel, but they live in the wrong suburb. That's not a Bayside suburb, so they're not local. So this is a local owners club, so they can't join. Or they might not. They might have some other dog, like a husky, and they might live in the wrong suburb, and so they're not going to be able to join. Or they might actually have a husky, but they do live in the right sort of Bayside suburb, but because it's a husky, they can't join. So there's only 4 things you need to do in the kind of end of program processing in this one. So they need an application about why they failed if they're not allowed to join. But like we said, there's only 4 possibilities, not 8. So that should be a lot easier for you guys to do. And you need to do the challenge task just to make sure you've understood the learning. Okay, so that's it for the lesson. It's best to get this printed out of instructions because then it's a lot easier to look at rather than kind of trying to pause the video and go forward and backwards in that. But if you're really tight and you don't want to pay $1.80 or something to get it, well, be it as it may. And you can also, if you're a student, ask your teacher because they might have already bought it, or they should buy it for the whole class because they can easily get that anyway. All right, so remember we do have our full Python programming course, and if some of this was a bit too advanced for you, maybe it's because you haven't done our previous lessons. So go to PassyWorldOfICT.com/Python, go to the Python tab, and it's got all of the lessons there in the order you need to do them, and you can click on them and go to the videos and do them and get the downloads as well. And that's it for this week's lesson. So I hope you liked it. It was good having kind of the dogs and seeing Murphy again, because, you know, it's all about me and all about Murphy. My dog, my little Cocker Spaniel. Now he's a great dog. He's really cool. I'll wake him up and take him for a walk after this video. And so give it a big thumbs up, like, just because you like Murphy, because he looks cute, that'll do. And then also subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of the video updates. And we'll see you in the next lesson.